All right, good evening, everybody. It is a little after 5 p.m., and it is September the 8th. It's our pre-agenda meeting for the month of September, and we will start with an invocation. You will pray with me. Father, we thank you so much for the beauty of this season. We thank you for this weather. We thank you for much-needed rain. Lord, we thank you for the leaders that are in this room and within our community. We thank you for the work that you've entrusted us with. May we make good decisions. May we make wise decisions for all of our residents and businesses. And be with us as we make those decisions. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a few public hearings this evening to hold before we get to the review of our agenda for next Tuesday's meeting. And so the first public hearing we have is a public hearing on the restoration business at 200 South Salisbury Avenue. It's attachment 1 in your agenda material. And so with that, I'll invite Mr. Blunt forward to give us a preview.
Mayor and members of the board, I can give you several options at this point since our room is not very crowded with people clamoring to speak. There was at least a memo in your package that you've probably had a chance to review. I do have a PowerPoint on this one that shows some pictures that may give you a better visualization of the amendments we're suggesting. So I don't know if you want to see them tonight or you want to wait and see them Tuesday or see them at both times. It's at your pleasure.
Will the public hearing be continued until?
No, this is the public hearing.
This is it. I think it's good to see it.
Yeah, we need to see them. Yeah, we need to see them.
Okay, so I'll walk you through this fairly quickly since I think you're all familiar with it. This is an overhead shot. See it a little better. Okay, so an overhead view of the property with no vehicles parked anywhere. This was back in earlier days. This is still 2021 Google pictures that show a little more activity. This is from Salisbury Avenue. This is from the corner, and that's one to keep in mind. You can see there very clearly the damage to the curbing at the corner and the new sidewalks that DOT put in for us, and also some of the parking that had gotten started at that point. This is a look from 2nd Street to the side of the building. These are the conditions that were approved by this board back in December, I believe it was. I won't read through them all, but you can use this for reference if you need to look at what was actually approved. The amendments will refer to this, and if you need to jump back to these to see what was originally done, we can do that. And that's just a continuation. So condensing that down, the conditions that you approved basically followed these 5 general areas: limitations on vehicle service area, limitations on vehicle storage areas, hours of operation, the site and landscape improvements, and the closing of a public alleyway. So as far as the limitations on vehicle service, we suggest no changes to the original conditions. Basically, it said he had to do the work inside the building and at the rear, and that he could not do any service work in the front. And I think you want to maintain that requirement. The storage area has been the point of contention in previous meetings and any complaints we've gotten from them, primarily having to do with parking or storing vehicles in the front parking lot, which is in violation of that condition. We are suggesting that that condition stay as it is. We don't think he should be storing vehicles in the front, and in the past month, he's done a pretty good job of not storing vehicles in the front. He is allowed to keep one display car out front. I think when that was approved, you probably had in mind it would be a beautifully restored car, but he has decided to show the pre-condition of a car that he might work on. That's his choice, his business. As far as the other restriction included in the vehicle storage area, the restriction said that there will be no cars parked on the 2nd Street side of the building. What we were suggesting, and I'll show you some slides that demonstrate a little better, is that he be allowed to fence in a small area on the 2nd Street side towards the rear of the building to allow him to store a few more cars in that area. And there's exactly what I'm talking about. That black line is where he would like to put a 6 to 8 foot privacy fence that would allow him a little more parking space than he has right, or not parking, but storage space. So he would be allowed to store vehicles in that area. If you've driven by there after speaking to him about this many months ago as a possibility, he jumped ahead and started putting in fence posts. So where you see the fence post is about where the fence would go. Don't think of that in isolation, though, because there are other things that will improve the visual aspect of the building that comes in future slides. The hours of operation, I think we discussed that several times. Right now, he's restrained from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays, and they're closed on Sundays. For any other business, either in the C-29, which it was originally zoned, or in the vehicle service district, we do not have hours of operation restrictions on other businesses. I understand why this one was imposed. What I'm suggesting is not necessarily to do away with it, but at least to expand it to what would be normal business hours for most businesses. So I'm suggesting 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. That's open to discussion. The landscaping and repair of the curbing at the corner and closing that driveway on the corner. It's my feeling, and again, I think you'll see it better from the following drawings and maps, that corner really is outside of his property line. From the sidewalk out is not in his property. It's not a piece of his property. And therefore, I don't think he should be responsible for repairing the curbing. The sidewalk's already been repaired by NCDOT. I think we should repair the curbing, and we should do the backfilling and planting behind that curbing as we're doing that project. From the sidewalk back to his property is his responsibility, and we would be asking him to do some improvements at that point. And so, again, there's a drawing. The yellow dotted line is his property line, and you can see it on the Salisbury Avenue side. It's at the back of the sidewalk. On the 2nd Street side, it's actually probably 6 to 8 feet towards the building from the sidewalk. So that corner, the curbing needs to be replaced. And when the curbing is replaced and raised to a proper height, it will require a little bit of backfilling behind the curbing. After we backfill it, it should be planted in grass just like the rest of the strip is on that side of the sidewalk. What we would ask of him is to improve the site. And related to that corner is the installation of some type of barrier that would permanently block off the parking area from that corner so that there's no temptation to continue to use it as a driveway. Landscaping timbers, pavers, something that would actually raise the grade up some amount and allow him to backfill with gravel inside of that to raise his parking lot just a little bit. In addition to that, as far as the front parking lot right now, there's still a lot of grass out there. The grass needs to be taken up and gravel put down so that it can be that rectangular parking lot that I'm showing right there. He should not be parking on the grass. I'm showing, instead of suggesting that some type of landscape be installed with my green blobs there, you will see what my limited landscaping skill is.
Is it broccoli?
Broccoli blobs. That's a good description. Small trees, shrubs, flowers. There's a verbal description in the original conditions, but that gives you a better visual idea of how that would improve the look of that building from Salisbury Avenue and from 2nd Street. And again, you see the proposed fence on the 2nd Street side. It would have trees or bushes planted down that side so that it just wouldn't be a blank wall of wood. The public alley closure, as I mentioned before, has sort of gone away. It's not required. It's not desired by the neighboring property owner. So that one I would say is a moot point. We just ignore that one from this point going forward. So you have several options coming up to you next week. We can go back and try to enforce the original conditions. We can, or you can, approve the amendments to the conditions, and then we will endeavor to enforce those. Or at your discretion, you can offer some modifications. These conditions have been forwarded to the actual property owner, Mr. Went. I just spoke to him 10 minutes ago. He is basically in support of all the amendments we're suggesting. He sent an email with hopes that he would be able to work with the town to continue to improve the property and also to help his tenant run a successful business that would be beneficial to the town. So if we had people here at this point, I'd say have a public hearing, and I guess officially you need to do that. So I'll answer any questions.
So with that, we will officially open the public hearing. And what we'll do then, I know we do have one written correspondence, and so we'll let Mr. Blunt read that. You have that with you right now?
Right in front of me.
Okay, all right, very good. And then what we can do is, have we received any other correspondence besides that? Okay. And then what we can do is see if the board has any further questions for Mr. Blunt tonight. All right, take it away.
I will point out that in addition to our normal newspaper advertising 2 times in the Salisbury Post on Sundays, it was on our website. We did do a mailing to all of the property owners in the area that were originally notified and had a public meeting with Mr. King to let them know about this public hearing. So the absence of response might give you some indication of whether the neighbors care about this one way or the other. I'll leave it to you to determine that. Mr. Tyler Went, who is the owner of the property, sent an email today. I've been after him. I sent this set of amendments to him a month ago. He's had a family medical emergency that he's been taking care of, so he's been preoccupied. But he did say, and I'll read this for the record: "Dear esteemed members of the Spencer Board of Aldermen."
Wow.
Esteemed.
Kissing up already.
I trust that in the spirit of improving the town of Spencer and encouraging economic development within the town, a mutually beneficial agreement can be reached in order to allow business owners to thrive within the town limits and spur prosperous growth in this great town once again. I admire all the improvements and development that has happened in the past years that has been in no small part to the leadership and dedication of Mayor Williams and the concerned members of the Board of Aldermen. I look forward to seeing Spencer return to the once prosperous town of growth and development that made it the largest contiguous historic district in the state of North Carolina. I trust that we will be able to reach reasonable accommodation to allow for the prosperous business as well as aesthetic improvement in the downtown area. I have attached a revised copy of the most recent revision of the conditional rezoning for the property located at 200 South Salisbury Avenue. I apologize for not being in attendance in person. I had previously scheduled obligations that made it impossible to be present at this time. And again, I did speak with him just a few minutes before the meeting. As far as how to block off that corner, he was suggesting large ceramic pots with trees in those. I told him that we'd work out the details of how it would be closed, but it did need to be closed permanently. Other than that, he seems to be in pretty much agreement of it.
Okay. So with that, are there any questions tonight, or anything additional that you need staff to prepare to be prepared on Tuesday night to act one way or the other on this?
Mr. Blunt, one thing that I had noticed when this first came up was that the property owners who were notified, and I believe there were about 40 or so of them who got a mailing. But unfortunately, most of the people who received the mailing were absentee owners. It was not the people of the community who actually got the notification. I mean, yeah, it's in the newspaper and it's on our website, but I just wonder, we didn't put up a sign on the property this time about a public hearing, did we?
No, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
Kyle's not here. I'm still not sure how many people showed up for that original meeting, but I know that there were people there. So, yes, we always mail out to the property owner record.
Right.
That's the only thing we can do.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Closing that corner right there on 2nd Street eliminates that one driveway. And I don't really see how he can run that business with that one driveway cut on Main Street. I understand what you're saying. I think it would do a lot as far as landscaping, and as far as that goes, I think we'd probably have to tie a sidewalk in as well as far as that goes. And I think that curb is a granite curb, so I don't know how Joel or whoever's going to do it would do it, but I think there's some problems as far as that goes, doing that. Okay, and I'm going to ask a question. Now, you give us 3 options. Do we have a 4th option?
You probably have 5 or 6.
Well, the question is, can we just pull his whole business out?
No, at this point, if he lives within the conditions you approved, he gets to live there. It's when he can't live up to those conditions that you could consider revoking his conditions on.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I understand that. I have some problems. I don't have some problems with Mr. Went, but we're dealing with Mr. King, and I do think there's some problems.
And as far as that corner, in answer to your comment on that, from a planner's perspective, having a driveway at a corner of 2 major roads is some of the worst design that we could possibly have. It's dangerous.
Well, and I guess my question is, does DOT actually allow that?
They would not allow it on their road. We should not allow it on ours.
Well, this is, so.
2nd Street is ours.
Right, but the driveway actually comes back out onto Salisbury Avenue.
It's on the corner, so it's considered both, I think.
Right, and so that being the case, it would be on DOT, within DOT right away.
They would not allow it today. We would not allow it today. Not sure how it ever got allowed, but it needs to be.
It looks like it was kind of arbitrarily made over time.
It probably was self-created over time, although Mr. Wentz said it's been there for decades.
I think it has too.
It has.
But regardless of what impact it has on him being able to operate his business, that corner needs to be closed.
I agree. But I think, like you said, I think Patty's made a point that, and I remember it used to be a grocery or a gas station there, a store and everything else. And I do remember people circling around, and that's convenient. Now, it's going to make it harder for him. I guess he'll have to unload his vehicles on 2nd Street somehow or another.
It will make, though, for much more orderly parking.
I agree. And I guess what we do need to do is make it as stringent as possible, the conditions, as far as I'm concerned.
And keep in mind, Board, at this point, we talked about it last month, at this point now, we are no longer dealing with Mr. King when it comes to this. What we are dealing with is Mr. Went as the property owner.
I understand.
And it's Mr. Went's job then to deal with Mr. King, making sure he is abiding by the conditions for that property.
One of the things that concerned me some time ago, and Chief Lanning, this is, I guess, a question for you. I know that you have, or your personnel have seen on several occasions him painting vehicles outside of the building. I know you probably can't get an accurate number, but I know that that has occurred. Could you enlighten us a little further on it? And is he still doing it?
Excuse me. So yes, as of Tuesday, there was another police report filed because it's to that point, and I think maybe Mr. King believes the trees are a barrier. But when they're painting, you go outside and it's a very clear, obvious cloud that comes across our parking lot. Thus far, haven't had any damage to the building or vehicles. The concern is the lack of parking. A lot of times they do park over there on that side of the parking lot. Is what happens when that overspray continues to come out and the damages somebody's car. Is the town's insurance going to cover that? Is Mr. King going to have to cover the repairs, whatever that may be? I would say 5-6 times since May. So it's like I told them, moving forward, anytime they have a problem, contact PD, get them to put a report in.
If I remember correctly, that's he's not supposed to be doing that. He's not supposed to be
that's what I told
any
him.
work outside of the building.
Correct.
When they file a report with the police department, and it goes to him, Mr. King, or does it go to Mr. Witt?
That I'm unsure of.
I question what kind of enforcement. I mean, what happens? Just a piece of paper?
So I think it was Tuesday night was the last. Officer O'Brien was actually busy, and I'm not sure if he ever even got to go by there.
Yeah.
But we're talking 6:30 at night. So again, I know we talk about hours of operation, but I can say being next to this structure for its duration, a lot of things that were probably supposed to be done have not been.
Yeah.
And it's not to run a business out of town. I'm very supportive of the growth of the town, but
My understanding is there was another police report today, correct?
I think, yes, this week. I don't know about today, but I think in the last couple of days.
These are all related to customer complaints.
Customer complaints mean what? I mean,
Well, those are civil matters, right? So it's not out, but that's another aspect of this.
but what's happening? I mean, is there any penalties as far as that goes? I mean, no offense, if we're just wasting paper, if that's all we're doing.
Those matters, those type of police reports, they're filed as civil matters, meaning that those customers then have to file a complaint in civil court against Mr. King.
That's not what
But
happened.
again, I want our board to keep in mind what we are considering here now is for the property owner, not Mr. King. And so if he is painting outside and not doing things in compliance with the permit, that notification is going to be sent to Mr. Wint, who then is responsible for ensuring that that stops. And if it doesn't, it's Mr. Wint that we take action against, which I don't think that Mr. Wint's going to argue that he shouldn't be painting outside,
No, nobody.
especially right beside a fire department,
department.
where we have a staff that takes very, very good care of our equipment.
Sure.
And the last thing we need is green paint on red fire trucks.
Yeah, one of the other conditions that was in here was no vehicle shall be stored on the business premises awaiting service for longer than a maximum total of 30 days. I question whether that's even coming close, because I've had people tell me that he intended to get work done and they ended up going and getting their vehicle because he hadn't done anything in more than 6 weeks.
I will point out that I used to mention to you do things that are legally defensible. And what we were dealing with in this situation is a conditional zoning approval and then enforcement of those conditions. And what I'm suggesting tonight is some slight modifications to those conditions that will be equally enforced. If he is violating either the current conditions or the conditions that might be approved, it will again go to Mr. Wynn as the property owner in violation of his conditional zoning. And at that point, we would come back to you again with a question mark. And the question mark would be, do we revoke his conditional zoning, and that would put him out of business? Or do we fine him, as any code enforcement issue can be handled? Or do we mitigate? There's even that option. Do we go down there and tow some cars off and send him a bill for it? There are various things that we can do to enforce our zoning ordinance, but we want to stay away from trying to tell him how to operate his business internally. And if he has arguments with customers and that ends up in civil court, that's their business. And certainly it may shade your decision-making process, but I would advise you not to mention it. It's a civil issue that's handled by the courts between customer and vendor. As far as the paint on our vehicles, if we feel like, number one, that he's violating his conditional zoning conditions by doing work outside of the bays, then that's a violation. And we contact Mr. Went and violate him on that. If he'd actually get some paint on our vehicles, then the town sues him. And it becomes a civil issue between the town and Mr. King at that point, not Mr. Went, because it would be Mr. King that damaged our vehicles. So those kind of operations and enforcement efforts and legal decisions will come back to you in the future. Don't let them cloud your decision too much on the zoning issue that will be before you on Tuesday, so that we can walk away so Jay won't have to get too busy going to court for us.
And so because of that, I think, we need to be very clear as a board that for the purposes of this is, we don't even need to consider Mr. King in this at this point. We need to consider that this is a direct conditional use permit with Mr. Wynn. And so I would encourage the board, think of it in that respect when it comes to this matter, not all the other items. All those other items, I believe, will eventually come to a head and, work themselves out.
As this conditional use and the restrictions or lack thereof, modifications, whatever ends up happening next week, they run with the land, right?
They would.
So, and to your point about dealing with Mr. Went, we're talking about improving the property to make it such that it is palatable visually, etc., to our neighbors, our town, to people who live around there, the people who come through and see it. So it's not just about the current situation. It's about the future.
I agree.
Future uses, future. So I guess what I'm saying is in the future, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we don't like the zoning. We could always change it, but until that time, these conditions would stay in place.
The current conditions will stay in place until there is some legal reason to revoke them.
Okay. So this isn't just about King. This is about making sure the property is visually palatable.
And hopefully such is technology. I think you'll agree that some landscaping, some improvement of the parking area in the front, some ways of.
Well, all the landscaping in Kingdom Come wouldn't improve the appearance of the building. That's one butt ugly building. If
but the building's not going away, so
no.
At this
I
point,
would say you're really, Bill.
It's always been ugly building.
at this point, any improvements we can get, I think, go to your point. Even if this business goes away a year from now, you will have improved the appearance of that corner by taking these actions. And then the next person that comes in and occupies that building will be starting from that point going forward. There are, as I pointed out to you before, the C29 and even the VSR classification, if you look in the table of uses, there's a long list of uses that go in there with no controls, no additional controls over what we have in our zoning ordinance. So all these zoning conditions could be ignored by the next owner of that property. You have an opportunity to fix some stuff up. I guess what I'm getting across to you.
So Ted will be paying for majority of the beautification?
Everything you see there, he would be paying for, yes. The corner work, again, I'm suggesting that that is really our responsibility. It's outside of his property. It's a public street right away. It's curbing, which is associated with the street. I wish we could just tell DOT to fix it, but they're not going to come back and fix a curb that's been damaged like that. We would probably go back with concrete curbing instead of the granite. That would be much cheaper and easier to install.
What kind of price we're looking at?
Don't know. And that would be a budget issue that they would have to bring back to you to decide when and how far to take the repairs.
I think to add in, and Joel, if there's anything on that you have to add into the discussion, now it's a good time. But I think, was there any preliminary costs that we got on the curb?
I have reached out to 2 contractors, one that did some curb setting. It's hard to find somebody to set granite curb. That's not just everybody. So the contractor that did it for us on 4th Street, and I just sent a message to get us a price on setting the granite or going back with concrete. In that area, because the fire department has a concrete wrap that was tied into theirs, it really wouldn't look that far out of place to use concrete, so we'll just have to see what the price difference would be. I'm still sure the concrete's cheaper to pour the curb than to put that granite back. And I'd have to search. I don't have enough round curb to fix that granite, but Salisbury may have some that I can get hold of. So it could be we'll just have to see price-wise what it's going to cost.
And can Powell bill funding be used?
Not because that's on state road.
Part of it's on state as it wraps around on the 2nd Street.
Yes.
More
Technically, the state-
trouble than it's worth to try and figure that out.
Technically, the
Okay.
state road would wrap all the way to where the sidewalk would be, and that would take in that whole corner, because they take care of the aprons as well going into the street. But yeah, maybe. I mean, we can always ask and see what they would, what they would do. Sometimes they surprise me with answers.
Well, the other question I wonder is when they come through and resurface, are they going to have to raise that curb anyway? I know they'll mill it down, but to be able to get, we should.
I would say yes, they would have to do something to that curb line. But if they're going to continually to use it as a drive, then the curb just needs to be taken away. Does that make sense? It kind of depends on what we're wanting to achieve here. If we want to block it off, then all of that concrete would disappear. We'd backfill it with dirt, put grass in it, and be done. It'd just be a constant curb. There is an option if you would want to straighten that side out and actually put that intersection, but the drive going into 2nd Street is really not an option because it's too close to the intersection. That really wouldn't work very well. I believe Chief Powell would probably have a conniption if I told him that there. So,
Can I say something?
Sure.
On the 2nd Street side, it looks like asphalt's been added to the road to raise the road up a little bit, and that may be part of the reason that granite curb is so short. I just wonder if you could actually just somehow or another pick it up.
Well, it's either that or you could mill it down. I think that the better option, if the top of that curb line, but you see where kind of between the lower area to the front, there's no curb line there at all.
Yeah.
There's not that I can see now. There may be deep in there. I'm not sure, and that may be that when the state comes by and mills those intersections, we might can get it down. That's gonna put a hump in 2nd Street if we leave it that low, or it'll hold water when it rains. There'll be a hole there. So, I mean, there's numerous options. Kind of whatever you're. And I'll try to get some prices. Like I said, I sent both a concrete contractor and the granite, see what we can do. Thank you.
Mr. Blunt, another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Went has seen these plans and the suggestions that we're making, but has Mr. King seen these as well?
I don't talk to Mr. King anymore.
My question is, is he going to allow, I guess the question is not allow, but how is he going to deal with having no other driveway in or out if that's closed off?
He is aware that it's going to be closed,
He is aware of it, okay.
and I guess my flippant answer would be, I don't care.
Well,
Come on, now give us a better wording than that.
Well,
Something we need to think about.
well, right, because let me clean Mr. Blunt's answer up a little bit.
Business.
I'm
Is
working a 24-hour shift at the Mag's
that
office tonight.
becomes Mr.
I'm
Went.
tired.
Mr. Went has seen it. Mr. Went has agreed to it. Mr. Went's tenant will have to abide with what Mr. Went, as the
Right.
property owner, does to his property.
Yeah, we don't have to manage this.
And
If
Mr.
we-
King did agree to it in the original format, which called for this corner to be closed. It just didn't have the details that I'm showing you now.
If we could we look at that image with the improvements again? I mean, I think to restate, and again, the closure of the driveway was always part of the conditions, but there's really not a parking lot up front right now. There's a driveway and that's it. And so
Well, that shows you what's pretty much there now. And what he does now is parks in the grass, those curved areas adjacent to the driveway.
So changing that to an actual parking lot with a driveway in and out, it ought to be able to circulate better, especially on the end closest to 2nd Street, because they'll be able to park cars in places where previously they couldn't because they were having to allow somebody to get through.
so where do you think he's going to park now?
Well, the front lot is not for storage of vehicles. It's for customer and worker parking only. So
So everything that's green there is going to be parking
it's going to be a parking lot. Yeah.
Okay.
And I imagine the dimensions, I don't know how far it is from the sidewalk to the front of the building and the landscaping, but
Oh, yeah.
it should be sufficient
30
to have
feet or something like that.
to have a row of cars parked on either end with a drive path in between, I think.
Again, those are operational details that he'll work out to run his business. That's not something you need to worry too much about. It's up to him. But again, that's not where vehicles to be worked on are being stored. The employees park there and customers park there to talk to them while they're coming in. The vehicles to be worked on would come in the back driveway into the back of the building and be stored behind the building. That gravel driveway that shows in that drawing on the left-hand side of the building, he fenced it across the front, and he does stack cars in there for storage. They're out of sight, so I would say they're in compliance with the storage of vehicles clause. You have to go looking for them to see them. These are improvements. I think this improves that site. They have basically agreed to these improvements, and we can enforce these improvements. How he works his operation without that corner driveway, again, should be irrelevant to this discussion.
Okay.
Get to do it all again Tuesday.
Thank you.
And if you want
Thank you
answers
for
to
all of
anything, let us know. We'll try to prepare for Tuesday to bring you more answers if you need them.
Thanks for all the hard work.
And the perseverance.
Yes, sir.
I think I called it a Herculean effort last
And for
time.
not,
Got
and for not
quoted on
caring.
that. Be careful what I say up here.
Yeah, please.
All right. With that, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right. All opposed? The public hearing is now closed. We now have another public hearing. It's attachment 2 in your agenda packet for the month. It is on storage buildings in all zoning classifications. Mr. Blunt.
This came to our attention as we were evaluating what could be code violations as far as storage buildings. And again, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation. This one I think is maybe simple enough that you might, it's up to you. If you want to see it, I'll be glad to run through it quickly. I'm not sure what you have in your package. Do you have a copy of the PowerPoint in your package? Or?
No.
So let's do this. So, undesirable storage structures in residential and commercial zoning. And you might recognize some of those pictures.
Very subtle.
Yeah, I already recognize them. Dozens of them.
So
every day.
We were spurred on by this concern to try to figure out what we would like to have. And this is a quick representation of what most of us would like to see as storage buildings. These obviously are the smaller storage buildings that you would see in residential areas. These are commercial type storage buildings. And there's all kinds of iterations of this, so don't let this limit what someone might put out there. The current text of what you can and can't do as far as storage building is very sparse. And it's a little hard to find. It's in Chapter 2, where anytime you can't find something, go to Chapter 2. It's probably in there somewhere. So after reading the limited amount that was in Chapter 2, I came up with this suggested text amendment, adding some fairly detailed descriptions of what can and can't be used for storage buildings in 3 basic areas. The first part is general limitations for all areas. And in that one, you see that trailers, containers, RVs, campers, rail cars, etc., shall not be used for storage or accessory building. Just plain and simple. And then we go through the residential and what can be used for storage buildings, the commercial, and the industrial. Industrial gets to be a little more challenging in that those storage trailers that we just said you can't use. A lot of industrial operations, including at least 2 in our town, use empty trailers for storage. So we put in some language there that they would be allowed in areas that were approved on the site plan or future additions to their site plan. So if they plan for it and it's properly screened per our current zoning classifications, then we allow them to use those trailers in the industrial classification. So that takes care of our 2 existing companies without causing them harm. And that's the ones I'm talking about. If we just outlawed trailers, those would have to go away. So we put that clause in there to let them keep them in.
Well, and here's the question. Are they actually using that for storage, or is that just staging for empty trailers that are going to be used to haul their product?
For swing, that's probably true. For PCA, I think they do store some paper products in trailers on site.
Because I know they've got quite a few trucks that are going out of there with cardboard boxes that they've produced.
They both, well, PCA more than swing, but PCA runs a lot of trucks in and out. They're actually being permitted now for a new parking lot extension and new driveway cut so that they can better facilitate their trucks coming and going. But for the purpose of this presentation, yeah, I think they do have some trailers that they're using for storage. Not many, and they park them in nice straight rows and keep the grass mowed so it's not objectionable. And it is an industrial zoning classification. So that's what you would expect out there. So on Tuesday, we would be asking you to approve that text amendment or amend it as you might see fit.
So then the question is for existing non-conforming uses. Talk us through that.
Legal non-conforming uses, just like any time that we change our ordinance, if what they have was allowed under a previous zoning ordinance, they get to keep it until.
Yeehaw. I love grandfather clauses.
Yeah. It is the law.
So
we have to live within that. If they are damaged beyond repair, or at least 50% beyond, then they have to discontinue their use. If they change the use of the lot, they have to come into compliance. And we are hoping to use that very clause.
Let me ask you, what if those storage trailers become so dilapidated that they cannot be moved, or they become deteriorated, rusting out hulks, okay? Is there something in there that, you know, that would force the property owner to remove them?
That would probably slip into the junked and abandoned vehicle classification. We would have to study that section to give you a good answer. It's no longer being used as a storage building because it's in such a dilapidated state. But we can take a look at it.
Well, they're dilapidated and they're still being used for storage. That's my point.
As long as they're being used for storage and they're capable of being used for storage, then they're probably going to be, as you say, grandfathered.
Crap.
But,
sorry.
As I say, though, they are proposing a slight change in the use of their property, and we're trying to use that as an opportunity to get the property screened so that you can't see those trailers. We'll keep you posted on that and see if that works or not.
Well, I appreciate you're doing this, going the extra mile and putting all this.
Ms. Craven, have we received any written correspondence?
No, for fun.
Okay, and I see no one here tonight. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion by Mr. Morgan. Second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All opposed? And the public hearing is now closed.
Thanks for doing that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Blunt, have you seen any of the situations where people are using like the, what do you call them, the ship containers to build houses?
We're seeing that happen a lot throughout the state, and a lot of zoning ordinances are getting modified one way or the other to either allow them or disallow them. But yes, we have seen some of that.
Make a great man cave.
We'll get you one. Tell your wife we'll haul it in next week.
Yeah, she'll love that. She'll love it.
And put it right next to the edge of the road.
All right, next item. We have a public hearing on short-term rentals. It's attachment 3 in your agenda packet.
And since we're on a roll, we'll just look at this one too. This came about by at least a year ago, somebody calling and asking if they could put an Airbnb type residence in one of our downtown buildings. And I looked through their ordinance fairly quickly, told them that I did not think it was allowed. Later on, I was asked again. Matter of fact, I was told by staff that there were at least 2 of them already in operation in our town. So I did some more research to make sure we were on firm ground if we had to close those down. And then we had another person request that they be allowed. I think they came through Alderman Sledge to voice their concern over that. So we did get to looking at it a little more closely. My original evaluation was correct. It's a convoluted story to tell you why it is correct, so I won't bore you with that tonight. But what we are suggesting is a modification to our ordinance that would make a change in the table of uses and allow the short-term rentals, is what Airbnbs are actually called in planning parlance, allow those in the downtown area in the second floor of commercial buildings. And I say in the ordinance upper floors in case we get a 3-story building at some point that we want to let them go up there. It still requires them to meet certain limitations. They have to be an inspected space, either inspected by the Rowan County Building Inspection Department that would allow residential use of that space, or our code enforcement officer would inspect it if it's already completed. The inspection department's not going to come look at it after the fact, but we could. So I think this puts us on level ground to allow those in the downtown area. I do think it's an appropriate use of those upstairs spaces. It's a very progressive idea to have a lot of downtown residential use. In a presentation I heard years ago, it was talking about getting the tipping point of population in your downtown area so that you have enough people in the downtown area to actually support all your businesses in the downtown area. So this will be one step in that direction.
I'll also say, so I personally, Meredith and I spent a weekend not too long ago up in Hendersonville, up in the mountains, and stayed at an Airbnb that was above one of their kind of their shops there in the Main Street district. It's a major tourist draw, and because we have things in our community that draw tourists, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be progressive and have spaces like that. The people that are coming, either whether it be a weekend or whether it be a week or longer, can have a place to stay. So, have we received any written correspondence on this one?
Not written for us.
Okay. All right. So, any questions from Mr. Blunt on this one?
Unrelated question. Well, it is related, but it's not part of what we're voting on. We're not getting occupancy tax on these at the moment, right?
At the moment, absolutely not. No.
Is that something we can do?
There are certain laws and certain legal cases in play as to how you can regulate these. There's a case in Wilmington on point that's still being appealed by Wilmington that will help give us some more guidance on how much regulation we can do as to the operation. Therefore, can we basically have them register these spaces, and therefore be required to pay tax? I think Rowan County's tourism. It's not. I think there's a different body that actually monitors the hotel tax.
I think it's a tourism
It's
board.
the tourism.
It is.
Yeah.
They have certainly asked that Rowan County's leadership staff look into that to make sure all the Airbnb, or Salisbury's got a huge number of them, make sure they're all paying. So if they can get something worked out that's legal, with new guidelines, we'll certainly copy it.
Does the Wilmington case, I'm pretty familiar, does that influence occupancy tax, or is that more about the general ability to regulate?
It was about requiring multiple parts of it, but it fell down to them requiring that the owners of the Airbnbs register their properties and that they get a permit for them. And there were limitations on the number of permits that were given every year. The lottery system that they had come up with was deemed to be illegal, unfair, arbitrary. Separation part of that was declared by the courts to be unfair and arbitrary. The registration part of it, if it survives the appeal, then that would be what you would use to figure out where these things are and then give that information to the tax office and say, collect.
Okay. So is there a motion to close this public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Right.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Sledge, second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. That public hearing is now closed.
Ladies and gentlemen, as much as I love you, I've got to go back to the magistrate's office. So unless you have other questions, I'm out of here.
Do we need to come get you?
No, but if y'all get rowdy, I'll probably see you out there.
Have a fun evening.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
All right.
Is your wife in the slam again?
All right. Next item on our agenda is a follow-up on the presentation we received in August on the U.S. Motto Action Committee from Mr. Rick Lanier. And I think one of the things we were going to talk about was whether or not to put this on the agenda for Tuesday night's meeting to put it up for a vote. I have polled the board and kind of gotten some feedback. I'll open it up for any discussion. But I know that Mr. Lanier did indicate to us that if the board, if the general consensus was that we weren't going to approve it, he preferred that we just not vote on it altogether, which is understandable. So we wanted to have a discussion kind of prior to putting it on the agenda to kind of see where everyone stood on the matter. The general feedback I've gotten, it appears that it would not pass from everything that I have heard if we were to put it on the agenda. And I think kind of the general things that I've heard from folks were just that it was at this point in time, putting it on the building and on vehicles may do more harm within our community towards our goal of unity, then it would do good. And those were kind of the general sentiments. I don't know if any of the other board members have any input at this point in time that we want to consider. Beyond that. Okay. Hearing none.
Yeah, I have a comment. I think it's sad, personally, that this country's gotten to the point where it's become so multicultural and politically correct that we can't even put the motto of the United States on our vehicles. Or,
I will say, to that end, we don't even have Spencer's motto yet, so hopefully we can get our town motto up here and on some of our older vehicles too. So based on the consensus generally from the board, my recommendation to the board would be that we not put that on the agenda for Tuesday in respect to Mr. Lanier's request, unless there is a feeling otherwise by the entire board. Okay.
Leave it on. If he doesn't want us to vote for it, then I think that would be the thing to do.
Okay. Thank you all. We will move on to our actual agenda that is before you. Let me know if there's anything we want to add to the consent agenda or anything that needs to be added or removed as we go through it. Do I have a volunteer to do the invocation? I will. Thank you. All right. Approval of the minutes. Ms. Sledge, you've had a chance to review those?
I have.
Okay. And anyone else have any input or corrections to those agenda minutes? And if not, do we want to add those to the consent agenda?
I think we can put those on consent.
All right, consent agenda. All right. Recognitions. Do we have any recognitions the board would like?
I have been asked by the community garden folks to publicize something. They asked me if I could read it tonight and then again on Tuesday.
Okay.
Should I go ahead and do that now?
Let's go ahead and do that now.
This is called an autumn afternoon in the garden. The community garden fall fundraiser will be held on Sunday, October the 9th from 2 to 5 at the community garden. There will be food, pumpkins, games, and other fall activities. They're asking that you dress in your favorite costume and come enjoy an afternoon in the garden. Find out how you can help. Volunteers always needed. Information on how you can have a box. Sorry. Donations will be accepted, and we hope to see everyone there. If there are any questions, they can be directed to Kyle Harris. This came from Sue, who is my neighbor, Schultz.
Okay.
And they were headed away and would not be here, and didn't realize until yesterday that it was happening after our next meeting.
Okay. All right. Any other recognitions? Okay. All right, we'll have public comment and then approval of the consent agenda. We will receive an update from the Winterfest committee. We will receive a presentation on the fiscal year 2021 audit.
And Mayor, one note about the update from Winterfest.
Yes.
The request from the Winterfest committee was that hopefully that will hit about 7 p.m. or later. So if for some reason we move along in the agenda, they would like to be, able to do that at 7 p.m. or later. So just wanted to note that.
So, being the case, I would suggest we move that a little farther down in the agenda. Departmental stuff. All right, let's do this. I'm going to star that. Let's go through these and see, because some of it could be 7 o'clock, could be 9 o'clock. I don't know by the time we get to departmental reports. All right. Presentation on the audit. All right. The next will be the ordinance regarding the clarification of storage buildings based on the public hearing that we held tonight. The next will be to consider adopting ordinance 22-024 to approve short-term rentals based on the hearing we held tonight. The next will be to consider adopting 2021 general records and program records retention schedules for local government agencies.
I think that can move consent. I
And-
mean, there's 200 pages of it to review.
And so it is indeed 2021.
Please.
Yes, it is
Okay.
2021. The
Okay.
last revision was 2019.
Okay.
And this is the most current.
And
Can we
I-
add that to the consent agenda?
I think so. I've been about halfway through it, and it's
It's
exciting reading.
Stacy, will you be offended if we add that to the consent agenda?
that would certainly be a highly appropriate consent agenda item. I mean, this is a set of statewide
It's mandated.
guidelines
Either we gonna
that
move the meeting
it's
7
just
to
a
9.
formality that we need to adopt it locally.
Yeah, I hadn't seen anything that was glaringly a problem, but I mean, it's
It's not. We have files that we've been reviewing, and we'd like to go ahead and get rid of them. We can't do that for this.
The next item is to consider adopting Resolution 22-013 for Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan for fiscal years 2023 through 27. It's attachment 7, which was handed to you. And you want to say anything about that tonight, or?
Well, what I will mention is that plus the two items that follow are all related. We are working with an engineering firm called Hazen to apply for some state grant funding to help us address the 17th Street Stormwater project. You'll recall we have some funding in this year's budget for the design for that, and we were able to use a small portion of that to work with Hazen. And if we're successful with the grants, then it will take care of actually providing funding. Well, there's two separate grants. One is a planning grant that would help us with the design, but then also a construction grant that would help us implement the design. And so one of the things we need to do as in the process of applying for a grant is not just adopting the resolutions authorizing such, but also a stormwater capital improvement plan. And so there's a list of projects looking out over the next 5 years. The reason you have a printed attachment in front of you for the CIP is we had an initial call with the team last week, I believe, and made some revisions to what they were coming up with the project on 17th Street. And then on the capital improvement plan itself, that factored into how that fit within the plan, but also making sure the things that are proposed in the plan are aligning well with the grant funding. One other piece, and we'll make sure this gets attached when we publish the final agenda. They provided two versions of the capital improvement plan. The one that you have in front of you is today's dollars extending out, and there was another version that provided a cost escalation for the last 2 years in the CIP. So, for example, they showed what's $100,000 on this one on the model with cost escalation. That is actually 220, and then the next one that shows the $40,000 projects. Those are $64,000 projects. So they factored a bit of cost escalation in, and it would likely serve us well to include that as part of the CIP process.
Are we receiving any type of presentation or update Tuesday on these items, or?
I don't believe Hazen's planning to come.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's any particular questions, we could
So
see it.
then, I guess my question is then, do we simply want to add this to the consent agenda because it's basically to allow the grant process to move forward?
I would encourage that if that suits the board, and if you have any questions about these particular projects, Joel is here, and if there's any questions about that, but it would certainly be suitable to use that for a consent agenda item.
Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the CCAP thing that we're doing down there now.
It's separate. So the
Totally.
CCAP starts down 17th Street. It's the open channel part.
Right.
All of this that we're talking about is the area up 17th Street.
Close to where we'll put the Standback Environmental Center.
Well, no, it's actually it's on 17th, but it's the area that is basically at South Rowan and down
Okay.
to where it opens up. It's all the enclosed. The system is piped down to that open channel, and the system is undersized. It's failing. That's why a lot of that flooding is happening.
Oh, okay.
So the CCAP can't pay for piping improvements and those sorts of things. It's only for natural stream channel drainage. This covers, and that would address all the 17th Street flooding issues. And
then in the next 2 years, then we would, or the next couple of years, we would address Rowan Park and
yes,
First Street and 4th Street.
Yes. And then also you'll see in there the dam for the Standback Educational Forest. Yep. Okay. So this just gets the process started to start being able to hopefully get grant funding to make all of that happen. So we want to add that to the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that would be 13, 14, and 15, correct, Peter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And then item 16 is to consider adopting a budget amendment, ordinance 22-020 for the Atkins River Trailhead project. Mr. Morris, you want to come forward?
Pick him up.
The budget amendment was prepared by John Softly, and this is in coordination with the town manager and some other moving parts out in the community. As the board is aware, the construction bids were higher than we had anticipated. And so we came to the board and explained at the last meeting that we wanted to proceed with the project in order to take advantage of weather during the fall to get things going and get the project built. And so I think I can summarize this properly by saying that this is an accounting procedure that will allow us to amend the budget using funds from the fund balance. In the meantime, we are seeking additional funds from other sources. You may have read in the paper just yesterday or today.
Can I jump in, Mr. Morris, just 1 minute?
Please.
With the budget amendment, we're not going to move anything from fund balance.
Okay.
We're amending the project to show additional donated funds as a revenue source, anticipating the donations. Joe's about to talk about one of them.
So basically what we're doing is we're increasing the project budget to a lot, and then having a line item, the project budget for expenses, and then having a line item for additional revenues that would be coming in from private donations.
I should have understood that better, but I do now.
Yeah.
But so we did receive news that the Rowan County Commissioners have appropriated $100,000 to the town of Spencer for this project. And so we're halfway there in terms of meeting are addressing the gap in the construction budget. We have had other conversations and we have assurances, but we're putting together a plan to attain the additional $100,000. So I don't have any news on that right now, other than to say that we're working on it.
And we're confident we'll have it.
One way or another, hopefully we'll be able to follow the laws of the United States of America in order to get these funds.
Joe,
This does not involve any,
No bank robbery.
no bank robberies.
if all else fails, Joe's
under the table.
if all else fails, Joe's going to be washing cars at the Yadkin River.
That's right.
At
That's
Wilcox
right.
Bridge
And
as a
I'm
fundraiser.
not selling any children, so.
So again, it's a function of the staff asking the board to trust us, and we're plowing ahead, and we anticipate that we will have this fully resolved within a very reasonable amount of time.
And the reason we want to request this and the timing is that once we have this budget amendment authorized, then I can execute the construction agreement as you previously authorized. And so that'll allow us to get started. We have tentatively scheduled a pre-construction conference with Hall Contracting on the 20th of September. And so at that point, we'll have a better idea about notice to proceed and groundbreakings and those sorts of things.
Are there some materials down there now that might be for our project?
I don't think so. I know that there's a pipeline construction project going on, and that the property, the old finishing plant property, is being used as a temporary lay down yard.
But there's some stuff on this side of the fence.
Well, I haven't visited there in the last few days, but we haven't started.
Okay.
We have not issued a notice to proceed with the contract.
Okay.
And that's
If we haven't signed a contract,
they
don't have anything out there.
Okay.
And one other item by way of making progress towards starting is last week the Davidson County Board of Commissioners also helped us through the easement that was provided for us to be able to construct on their property on this side of the river. So we're certainly appreciative of the cooperation and partnership there as well.
Have we done anything as far as, I know they're thinking that they're going to request our police to patrol that area. Is that correct?
We've had an initial, I guess, request that's kind of come through on a staff level. And, we are going to be entertaining discussions to work out what it might look like to collaborate on both sides of the river. There's a need for security services on the Davidson County side. There's potentially a need for maintenance services on the Rowan County side. And so those are the things that we'll continue to be talking with our friends at Davidson County about and see what mutually benefit from.
One of the things that we're attempting to do is to provide a level of quality to the development such that the area on both sides of the river has the appearance of a single regional park. And so there are probably other discussions that need to take place about it. We have a very willing partner in Davidson County. We've had good support from our commission. We've had good support from the philanthropic community. And a lot of this has been built around the idea of a regional vision. We've also had really good support from the state government, by the way. And so there are some ongoing discussions that need to be had about how that is approached and how the maintenance is shared and that sort of thing. And so this is a incremental first step. Our building of the connection to the bridge, and the folks from Davidson County could not have been more accommodating in terms of working with us on it. So glad to have gotten that taken care of.
I think there's been some pretty serious vandalism down there on their side.
So
Signage.
There has. Yeah.
So that there has been, and so that's all part of this conversation is how we might be able to potentially provide some, additional patrol.
Joe, have we got any more information from Mr. Donald Rand concerning what he's planning to do there?
So
We've heard everything over the last several years, from a fishery to, this, that, and the other. And I was wondering if any more, finite plans or something is becoming more concrete in terms of what they're planning to do there.
Is that something you'd like to take a shot at?
You can.
Well, what I would like to say is that we've met with Mr. Rand and his partner, Mr. Fleming, and also another group of investors from
Winston-Salem.
I'll just say that.
Yep.
And we've had sort of a discussion about how there might be a development plan for that site. And that's, at this point, there's just an agreement to continue to talk. The short answer to your question is no, there's not a finite plan, but there are folks who are looking at the property and evaluating what might be the highest and best use of it and how it might be, financially profitable to them to invest there. But there's no timeline. I think I had to step out early of that meeting, but
there is a timeline.
Okay.
And I think the timeline is they are going through some more detailed environmental due diligence work right now. The expectation is within the next 2 years, we will hopefully see something finite moving forward there. And I think the key is that the property owners, along with the investment company that they are talking to, that may ultimately end up buying the property, has extensive experience with rehabilitating brownfield sites, and they have bought into this vision that we've all talked about of industrial on the east side of Highway 29 and mixed use retail, commercial, even residential on the side where the actual finishing company plant was. And so that being said, I feel really positive about the direction that it's heading, and I think it says a lot that they've got a capital partner that is interested. I think it's showing progress that things are starting to happen out there.
I was just curious because I don't want to see it become another place like the gigantic warehouse that they're putting on Webb Road or south of the China Grove Rockwell I-85 exit. Just
we've stressed that
there's good development and there's not
right
good development, and I just think that is a diamond in the rough that could be developed into residential or mixed use. An area that's one of the most beautiful places along the Atkins River chain, and I hope that they are smart enough not to waste the opportunity of making something beautiful.
I'm under the impression that they share that sentiment, but that they recognize the unique nature of the property, and that there are many properties where speculative warehouse type buildings could be built. But this maybe is a place to do that. I mean, this is the decision, the development decision on that site is a 100-year decision. They were very open to those concepts.
Two things I'll add, and I think this is a good sign, is one, they obviously see the potential that site has. They stressed it. The other part, across Highway 29, that they feel like that site is more conducive. They would want to see it as a manufacturing site, not necessarily just distribution. So that means jobs. So that's all in all. The talk right now is good. We'll see if we can continue to push it to reality. Okay. So, what does the board want to do with this on Tuesday? You want to have it as a consent agenda or regular agenda item?
I think we should talk about it because here we're getting some money again. So let's.
So we can do that then, or we can actually do it during departmental reports, and we can have an update
Well,
at
either
that
way.
point, just on the status of those things.
Either way.
Since this is just solely a budget amendment.
Yeah.
Can we do that, and then just be sure to have an
Yeah.
update on
Yeah.
Tuesday during the departmental reports?
So I'll be participating via Zoom.
You do a great job there.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us advance warning.
We get to see Joe's face 4 times the actual size when he's on Zoom, so that's good.
I won't be an actual planner. I'll be playing one on television.
All right, next item is property liens. James, anything unique about these ones?
Would you like more information on these?
Well, just, is there anything unique that the board should be aware of with these, or are these pretty straightforward like they normally
They're
are?
mostly pretty much straightforward. Mowing liens, with the exception of the one is for abatement of the property at South Iredale, $1,100.
Okay. Any questions for James on these? And if not, you want to add them to the consent agenda.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, it sounds to me like the Winterfest update will be after item number 11. Right before departmental reports. Who suggested that? Great idea.
This one.
Yes. So, the other item we need to consider adding, and so this would actually be, we'll probably do this as, this would be right before the update from Winterfest. And it's the handouts that we're sending down to you right now. Peter, you want to give an overview on this?
Yes, and we will discuss this if it's added to the agenda for Tuesday. But we have, as you know, over many years been planning how to connect to the Atkins River through the Greenway. There's been the concept known as 3rd Street Greenway that has been funded by NCDOT using federal transportation alternatives funding. And so what that did at the time that this was awarded, so some years ago, was provide 80% funds towards the cost of the project. At the time, the project, which was in very conceptual stages and still is in some regards, was a $4.5 million project. So that meant 80% or $3.5 million would be covered through the federal dollars, leaving the town with the 20% match of approximately $900,000. As things have evolved and how as we have tried to get our arms around this project and how to actually move forward with it, we've started making, I'd say, some more detailed concepts about where it should go, what it should look like. And there's the one thing I'll say is what you have in front of you is in draft form that will actually be getting revised further between now and Tuesday, but we'd like to be able to talk about this then. But the idea is that we understand there's some discretionary funding available from the General Assembly, and we believe there's an opportunity to request funding from the General Assembly to help us advance this project, both from the planning side and the construction side. The funding that was set up years ago was really only geared towards construction, leaving the town on the hook not just for the 20%, but also all of the design costs. We believe there's really an opportunity now as we finalize this to move forward with more updated cost estimates and that sort of thing, to also figure out how we can fund the design and the construction, and hopefully, my understanding in talking with the staff at the Cabarrus Row and MPO is that the federal funding source that applied to this is such that if your project cost goes up, the additional federal share can go up as well. It just leaves you with a higher local 20% match, in other words. And so that's what we're hoping to talk with the General Assembly about is assistance using discretionary funds to cover our share of the 20% match.
The other piece of this, if you'll look, so, and we're kind of still talking through what that exact amount applies to on the map that you have. This is the overall plan that Kimberly Horn had come up with Greenway, Bikeway, Sidewalk connectivity throughout the town. And so what we're really talking about with this EB 5861 project is everything in red there. And then you also, that would essentially connect our Yadkin River Trailhead that we're going to construct into town. And then ultimately down to close to Grants Creek and Standback Forest. But it would also then incorporate the site safety improvements between the three schools, connecting those with sidewalks. And that's something that we've talked about for a while now as a need. So that's what we're working towards. We've had some preliminary discussions with our legislators about it, and we'll be having some additional meetings, and hopefully they'll be able to secure those discretionary funds for us.
So I guess we should be nice to our legislators.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't
Right
put
now.
up any. Don't put up any signs. Who's running against them or anything?
That's right. Okay. So we'll add that, get additional input on that Tuesday, and so we'll add that as that will be item. Well, I don't know, Stacy, you'll have to do the math because I can't do it right now. But that'll be right after item 11 and right before the Winterfest update. Okay. We'll then have departmental reports. Anything we need to know this evening regarding those, or anything that the board has specifically for town staff that they would like them to look into further before Tuesday's meeting? Peter?
One thing I'll mention is Chief Lanning's going to be in training next week. We will have our deputy chief here, but he is available this evening if you had any questions for him.
Any questions from the board? Anything that we need to know that you don't think your deputy can handle?
Let's let the deputy chief do it.
Yeah,
I
let
think
him
that's a
chance
good.
to do it.
That's his opportunity. Let him do it.
So they're going to let the deputy do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Grant State waiting on the 35,000. Spoke to them yesterday, and we should receive notification that we were awarded that grant next week. So
Sweet.
at least we got that. And then
What's
paper.
that for?
So
Places
it was a supplemental grant.
Okay.
Practically, originally you had to itemize, hey, what are you going to use this 35,000 for? Went through, identified equipment that we kind of had been needing, but didn't necessarily have the funding for. They came back, opened it up again. It was more broad. Now here's 35 grand, whatever equipment you need with it. So,
What kind of equipment are you?
odds and ends, we're going to get some Jackson struts, which will help with stabilization on wreck. Kind of change a lot of tools, saws, drills, impacts to cordless. With our next truck, the plan was in that spec process back end of last year was to eliminate having to have a generator, going to everything be cordless, and to kind of keep on track with that. Don't remember everything off the top of my head, but there was a pretty extensive list, $35,000 worth. So
that's great.
And
How
then
about
say for
turnout gear, air pack?
Do what?
everything? How about turnout gear? Air
as
pack,
of today,
you know?
we are good on gear. We ordered that back in May when the full timer started. It's about a 11-month manufacturing time on that, like anything else that's blown out of the water. But we're waiting. So yeah, everything else is going.
How's your staff review? What's part time?
It's got it much better. I know we lost one a couple months ago. We've added 2 or 3 Got 2 applications that Stacy had sent me yesterday, so I'm gonna interview them week after next when I get back in town. So and me and Peter had talked, hopefully we come through with this safer grant, especially with potential growth that's coming. Just keep in mind, you see 2 people on a fire truck, can't do really anything with 2 people on a fire truck. It takes 3 at a minimum. You got to always remember the driver can't leave the truck. So then Salisbury's added us back to their alarms as a 5th engine. So practically anything this side of the city, which is, me and Peter talked, it's a negative, I guess, for me in some aspects. It's getting up more at night, but it's positive that they want us to come. So they
I
help us.
certainly commend Chief Lanning on the relationship with the colleagues around the county, and I think it speaks well for the Spencer Fire Department that we're being called upon.
Absolutely. I'll say that when I'm out and about with other communities, they mention you.
Hopefully it's all good.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Hopefully it is good.
They talk about how much they like working with us now.
There was discussion on the, I listed in on the Davidson County, County Commissioners meeting last week after the piece that Peter directed us to, and they were talking about the fire departments over in this end of the county and whether there was going to be, some consolidation sort of thing. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I finally got tired of listening to it. Wait.
I understand. And then obviously there on that back page, the risk review process that I'm gonna begin to go through with the league. I'm always up for criticism, so if they can tell us what we're doing wrong or maybe areas of improvement, I'm all for that. So hopefully that'll go. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything the board has for the departments that needs any specific preparation in advance of Tuesday? Okay. Town manager report. Anything tonight we need to be aware of?
Nope, we'll talk next week.
All right, sounds good.
Unless there's a question.
All right. And then we'll have requests and comments by the mayor and the board.
I was asked to share with you all the delegate report out from the Central Atlanta Regional Council.
Okay.
We met August the 10th, and there's information, and I made a copy of it for each of you. But we adopted a strategic plan for the next 3 years. Norwood and Stanfield, the towns of Norwood and Stanfield, joined the Central Atlanta Council at this meeting.
Which is interesting because Norwood had pulled out like 2 years ago.
Well, they've adjusted the fee schedule, and it's based now on population, I believe, and so that made it more attractive for some of these smaller communities to come back. So that was one of the things that we discussed. There was a request to ratify Central Atlanta's updated charter, and we did do that. Let's see, they've reached out to the manager and clerks with a request to add the charter ratification to the agenda of the upcoming council and board meeting. Okay, expanded service offerings. They've partnered with 2 consulting firms to expand the organization's service offerings. And the Central Atlanta office has been relocated to the David Taylor Drive in Charlotte.
So that's where it was.
They moved down the street,
they have
or across the street or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So this I made copies of this, so I'll.
And thank you again for representing us with them. Okay.
I sat in on the EDC meeting today too. One of the things that discussed there, and I think I can tell you this, is that there's some talk with the county about how incentive grants are being looked at.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's in progress, and there'll be some revisions to the county's
Mhm.
policy that'll be focused, I think, more on job creation.
Different point system, I think, that they're looking at.
Yeah. But I think the intent is they want to incentivize, job creation, higher paying jobs, those sorts of things. So, okay.
I'm trying to think if there's any, I think the things that are on the agenda coming from planning, I think are going to be recommended from the planning board on Monday night. So that's, they meet prior to our meeting
Correct.
on Tuesday. So I think the things we've talked about tonight are going to be presented.
Okay.
As coming from planning and zoning, the Monday night meeting. I don't think there's anything else that was there.
So that is our agenda for Tuesday night. Anything additional that needs to be added? Okay. And is there a need to go into executive session tonight? Okay. Hearing none, we have reached the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Mahadas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All right. All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Don't forget, next movie night is Saturday night at dusk.
Little Giants, right?
Yep.
A great one.